The Hartwell Ball was the most anticipated event of the London season, and Lady Ottilie Whitmore had positioned herself precisely where she intended to remain for the entire evening, behind a marble column, in the shadows, invisible. The ballroom blazed with candlelight, diamonds glittering on every neck and wrist, silks rustling as couples swept across the polished floor. Laughter and music filled the air, the sounds of a world that had once welcomed her and now pretended she did not exist. At 24, Ottilie had learned that invisibility was a mercy. 2 years ago, she had been the center of attention. 2 years ago, she had been moments away from becoming a viscountess. 2 years ago, Aldrich Hensley had left her standing at the altar of St. Margaret's Church, while 300 guests watched in horror. And then he had destroyed what remained of her. She pressed deeper into the alcove, adjusting her position to avoid the light. Her gown was 3 seasons old, carefully maintained, but unmistakably dated. Her gloves had been mended twice. The pearls at her throat were borrowed from her mother, the only pieces not yet sold to pay her father's mounting debts. She should not have come. But her mother had insisted, had wept, and had begged her to show her face just once more in society. Perhaps someone would see past the scandal. Perhaps some minor gentleman might overlook her ruined reputation for the sake of her modest dowry. Ottilie knew better. No one overlooked what Aldrich had done to her name. A cluster of matrons passed dangerously close to her hiding spot, their voices carrying with the particular clarity of people who believed themselves unheard. "Is that the Whitmore girl, behind the column?" Ottilie's heart seized. Surely not. She would not dare show her face, not after what happened. "My dear, desperation makes people bold. I heard her father is on the verge of complete ruin. They probably dragged her here, hoping some fool would take pity. As if anyone would, after what Viscount Thornbury revealed about her character." The woman's voice dripped with delicious scandal. Apparently, she threw herself at him quite shamelessly. He had no choice but to end the engagement to protect his family's honor. Ottilie's fingernails dug into her palms. Lies. Every word of it, poisonous lies that Aldrich had spread to cover his own sins. He had been the one with a mistress. He had been the one gambling away his inheritance. And when she had discovered the truth and confronted him the night before their wedding, he had preemptively destroyed her to save himself. Such a shame, another voice added. She was quite pretty once. Now she just looked sad, almost pitiful, really. Their laughter faded as they moved away, leaving Ottilie trembling with suppressed fury and humiliation. She needed to leave. This had been a mistake. Every moment she remained was another opportunity for whispers and pointed stares, and the slow suffocation of public contempt. "You are exceptionally skilled at hiding." The voice came from directly beside her, deep and unexpected. Ottilie spun, her back pressing against the cool marble. A man stood at the edge of her alcove, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark evening clothes immaculate. His face was all sharp angles and aristocratic planes, black hair swept back from a high forehead. But it was his eyes that caught her, gray as winter storms, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I was not hiding," she managed. "I was simply enjoying a moment of quiet. Behind a column, in complete darkness, while a ball rages around you." His lips curved slightly. "If that is not hiding, I should like to know what is. Perhaps I find columns fascinating." "Do you?" "This one has exceptional veining in the marble." He actually laughed, a low sound that seemed to surprise him as much as her. "You are either genuinely eccentric or remarkably quick-witted. I find myself hoping for the latter." Ottilie studied him more carefully now. Something about his bearing, the quality of his clothes, the casual confidence with which he occupied space, suggested rank. Significant rank. "Do I know you, sir?" "You do not, which is precisely why I approached." He tilted his head, examining her in return. Every other woman in this ballroom has spent the evening attempting to catch my attention. You have spent it avoiding everyone's attention entirely. The contrast was intriguing. Perhaps I simply have no interest in catching anyone. No, he said slowly. That is not it. You are not indifferent. You are wounded. The observation struck like a physical blow. Ottilie felt her carefully constructed composure crack. I beg your pardon? Your gown is beautiful but dated. Your gloves have been repaired with great care. And when those women spoke about you just now, you did not look angry. You looked like someone who has been bleeding so long they have forgotten what it feels like to be whole. Ottilie stared at him, stripped bare by his assessment. No one had looked at her, truly looked, in 2 years. Everyone saw the scandal, the ruined girl, the cautionary tale. Before she could even process the question, another voice interrupted. Theron, darling, there you are. I have been searching everywhere. A woman appeared, perhaps 60 years of age, dressed in dove-gray silk with diamonds dripping from her ears. Her silver hair was swept into an elaborate arrangement, and her eyes, the same storm gray as the man beside Ottilie, sparkled with sharp intelligence. Mother. The word carried warning. I was having a conversation. Yes, I can see that. The woman's gaze swept over Ottilie with the same thoroughness her son had displayed, but with calculation rather than curiosity. Lady Ottilie Whitmore, if I am not mistaken, daughter of Baron Whitmore, formerly engaged to Viscount Thornbury. Ottilie's stomach dropped. Your Grace, you know me. Everyone knows the Dowager Duchess of Ravenscroft, which meant everyone knew her son. Theron Vane, Duke of Ravenscroft, one of the most powerful and eligible men in England. The man who had just witnessed her hiding behind a column like a frightened mouse. Excellent. The Dowager Duchess smiled, and something in that expression made Ottilie deeply nervous. Then you will understand the weight of what I am about to propose. Mother, the Duke said sharply, whatever you are planning, stop. Nonsense, darling. This is perfect. She turned to Ottilie with gleaming eyes. Lady Ottilie, how would you like to destroy Aldrich Hensley and restore your reputation in a single stroke? Ottilie's breath caught. I do not understand. It is quite simple, really. The Dowager Duchess linked her arm through Ottilie's as if they were old friends. You are going to become engaged to my son, and by the time we are finished, all of England will know exactly what kind of man Viscount Thornbury truly is. The Dowager Duchess guided Ottilie through the ballroom with the force of a summer storm, her grip gentle but utterly unyielding. Behind them, the Duke followed, his expression thunderous. Your Grace, Ottilie managed. I do not think. Excellent. Do not think. Simply walk. Sophronia steered her through a doorway into a private parlor, away from curious eyes. Theron, close the door. We need privacy for this conversation. The Duke complied, but his voice could have frozen water. Mother, you have precisely 30 seconds to explain yourself before I have you escorted home. Oh, do stop being dramatic. Sophronia settled onto a settee, pulling Ottilie down beside her. Sit, darling. You look like you might faint. I might, Ottilie admitted weakly. Understandable. Now let me explain. The Dowager Duchess arranged her skirts with maddening calm. I've been watching you for several weeks, Lady Ottilie. You appear at events just often enough to suggest you have not completely surrendered, but you hide in corners and leave early. You are fighting, but you are losing. The assessment was brutally accurate. Ottilie said nothing. I also know what actually happened with Viscount Thornbury. Not the lies he spread, but the truth. Sophronia's eyes hardened. He had a mistress. He had gambling debts. You discovered both and confronted him. So he destroyed you first. How do you know that? Ottilie whispered. Because I make it my business to know things, especially about men who prey upon young women and then slander them to protect their own worthless hides. The Dowager Duchess leaned forward. Aldrich Hensley took everything from you. Your reputation, your prospects, your peace. Would you like the chance to take it all back? The Duke made a sound of frustration. Mother, you cannot simply manufacture an engagement to solve this woman's problems. Of course I can. I am doing it right now. Without consulting me? Without asking if I have any interest in participating in your schemes? Darling, you have shown no interest in anything for years. You reject every suitable woman I present. You attend these events like a man walking to his own execution. Sophronia's tone sharpened. But tonight, you approached Lady Ottilie entirely on your own. You spoke to her for 10 full minutes. You laughed. When was the last time you laughed at a social event? The Duke's jaw tightened. He did not answer. Precisely. His mother turned back to Ottilie. Here is what I propose. A false engagement lasting 3 months. During that time, you will be seen on my son's arm at every major event of the season. Society will watch the Duke of Ravenscroft court you with obvious devotion. They will question everything they believed about you. And when Thornberry inevitably reacts, because men like him always react when their victims escape, we will be ready. Ready for what? Ottilia asked. To expose him, completely and publicly. Sophronia's smile was sharp as a blade. I have evidence of his gambling debts and his mistress. I have correspondence that proves he spread lies about you deliberately. But evidence alone is not enough. Society needs a narrative. They need to see you rise while he falls. A duke's fiancée cannot possibly be the shameless creature Thornberry described. The contrast will force people to reconsider. Ottilie's mind raced. It was insane. Completely, utterly insane. And yet some desperate part of her, the part that had spent 2 years drowning in shame for sins she never committed, wanted to believe it could work. And what do I receive in return? She forced herself to ask practical questions. Beyond the restoration of my reputation? Compensation, naturally. Enough to resolve your father's debts and provide security for your family. Sophronia named a figure that made Ottilia's head spin. Considerate payment for services rendered. This is madness, the Duke said flatly. Complete and utter madness. Perhaps. His mother rose, smoothing her skirts. But it is also the most interesting thing to happen in years. Now, I will leave you two to discuss terms. Lady Ottilie, I suggest you consider carefully. Opportunities like this do not come twice. She swept out before either of them could protest, closing the door behind her with a decisive click. Silence filled the parlor. Ottilie looked at the Duke. He stood by the fireplace, one hand braced against the mantel, his expression unreadable. Your mother is quite forceful, she offered weakly. My mother is a menace who believes she can manipulate the world to suit her preferences. He turned to face her, and his eyes had gone cold. You do not have to agree to this. Whatever she promised, whatever she threatened, you can walk away. She did not threaten me. She did not need to. She identified your desperation and exploited it. His voice was harsh. I have seen her do this before. She finds people in difficult circumstances and makes them offers they cannot refuse. Ottilie stood, her own temper stirring. You think I am so easily manipulated? I think you are a woman whose reputation was destroyed by a coward, whose family is facing financial ruin, and who has spent 2 years being treated as a pariah by the very society that once welcomed you. His gaze was piercing. I think you would agree to almost anything if it promised escape. The accuracy of his assessment stung. And if I would? What business is it of yours? Because apparently I am expected to play the devoted fiancé in this farce. He crossed toward her, his height suddenly imposing. Do you have any idea what that entails? The scrutiny, the gossip, the endless performance? I have spent 2 years surviving scrutiny and gossip, Your Grace. I hardly think a few months of positive attention will destroy me." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps. Or reluctant respect. "You have spine," he observed. "I noticed that in the alcove." "I have had to develop one. Circumstances demanded it." They stared at each other across the dim parlor. Outside, the sounds of the ball continued, oblivious to the strange negotiation happening within these walls. "If we do this," the Duke said slowly, "there will be rules, boundaries. You will not mistake performance for reality. I assure you, Your Grace, I have no illusions about this arrangement. Theron, I beg your pardon? If you are to be my fiancé, you should use my name." His tone was grudging. "At least in private." "Theron, then." The name felt strange on her tongue. "And you should call me Ottilie." "Very well." He extended his hand, a formal gesture oddly out of place given the circumstances. "We have an agreement, Ottilie. 3 months. Then we part ways. Your reputation restored, your family secured." She took his hand. His grip was warm and firm, and something unexpected sparked where their skin met. 3 months, she agreed. "One more thing." He did not release her hand. "You will move into Ravenscroft House tomorrow. My mother will serve as chaperone." "Tomorrow? But that is highly irregular. So is arranging a false engagement at a ball. If we are going to convince society, we need to be seen together constantly." His eyes held hers. "Unless you are having second thoughts." Ottilie thought of her father's haunted expression, her mother's quiet tears, the whispers that followed her everywhere. She thought of Aldrich Hensley living his life without consequence while she rotted in social exile. "No second thoughts," she said. "I will be ready tomorrow." "Good." He finally released her hand. "Then let us return to the ball and begin our performance. My mother will have already started spreading the news." She would not. The look he gave her was almost pitying. "You do not know my mother at all." Theron had not exaggerated about his mother's efficiency. By the time Otilia returned home that evening, her own mother was waiting in the drawing room, a letter clutched in trembling hands. "Ottilie Charlotte Whitmore." Her mother's voice shook. "Tell me this is not some cruel joke." "It is not a joke, Mother. The Duke of Ravenscroft. The Duke of Ravenscroft wishes to marry you." Her mother stared at her, as if she had sprouted wings. "The Dowager Duchess sent a formal letter announcing your engagement. She mentioned compensation. She mentioned," her voice broke. "Ottilie, the amount she named would save us. Completely and entirely." Ottilie sank into a chair, exhaustion washing over her. "It is an arrangement, Mother. A business transaction. The Duke is not actually in love with me." "I do not care if he loathes you, child." Her mother crossed to kneel before her, grasping her hands. "After everything that monster Thornberry did to you, after watching you suffer for 2 years, someone is offering us a way out. Tell me you accepted." "I accepted." Her mother's tears came then, relief and hope and grief all tangled together. Ottilie held her, murmuring comfort, while inside she felt oddly hollow. She was selling herself. Perhaps not in the traditional sense, but the transaction was clear enough. 3 months of performance in exchange for money and restored reputation. It was practical. It was necessary. And it felt like swallowing glass. The following morning, the Ravenscroft carriage arrived at precisely 10 o'clock. Ottilie's meager belongings had been packed the night before, and she watched them being loaded with a strange sense of detachment. "Write to us," her mother urged, embracing her tightly. "Every week. And Ottilie, try to be happy. You deserve happiness after everything." "I will try, Mother." The ride to Ravenscroft House took less than an hour, but it felt like traveling to another world entirely. The Duke's London residence rose before her like something from a dream, all elegant stonework and gleaming windows. She had known he was wealthy, She had not quite comprehended what that meant until now. A butler with an expressionless face admitted her. A housekeeper named Mrs. Blackwood showed her to the lilac suite, a set of rooms so beautiful that Ottilie stood speechless in the doorway for nearly a full minute. "His Grace takes breakfast at 8:30, Mrs. Blackwood intoned. "Dinner is at 7. Formal dress required. The library is available for your use, though His Grace requests that books be returned to their proper locations. The Dowager Duchess's rooms are adjacent to yours, should you require anything." After the housekeeper departed, Ottilie moved through her new chambers like a ghost. The sitting room alone was larger than her entire bedroom at home. The bed could have slept 4 people comfortably, and everywhere she looked, she saw wealth, elegance, and a life utterly unlike her own. "Settling in, I see." Sophronia stood in the doorway, looking pleased with herself. "Your Grace," Ottilie curtsied. "Thank you for the accommodations. They are far more than I expected." "Nonsense. You are to be a duchess, at least temporarily. You should become accustomed to living like one." The dowager entered without invitation, examining the room with a critical eye. "Now, we have much to discuss. Strategy, primarily." "Strategy?" "For convincing society that you and Theron are madly in love, of course." Sophronia settled into a chair. "It will not be easy. My son has never shown interest in anyone. People will be suspicious. We need to plan every public appearance with precision. Does your son know you are here? Theron knows better than to interfere with matters I have taken in hand." The dowager's smile was serene. "Now, tell me everything about Aldrich Hensley, every detail you remember. I need to understand our enemy before we destroy him." For the next hour, Ottilie found herself recounting the worst period of her life, letters from his mistress, and confronted letters from his mistress, and confronted him. His cold fury, his threats, and then the morning of their wedding, when he had simply not appeared. "He sent a note to the church," Ottilie said quietly, read aloud by the vicar to all 300 guests. It said he could not in good conscience marry a woman of such questionable virtue, that I had pursued him shamelessly, and he had finally seen through my schemes. And society believed him. He was a viscount with powerful connections. I was a baron's daughter, with nothing but my word. Ottilie's hands had clenched in her lap. By the time I left that church, my reputation was in ruins. Within a week, every door in London had closed to me. Sophronia was silent for a long moment. Then she said, very quietly, "My son was right to ask you who hurt you. And I promise you this, Ottilie. Before this is over, Aldrich Hensley will know what it feels like to lose everything." The ferocity in her voice was startling. Ottilie looked at her, truly looked, and saw something beyond matchmaking schemes and social manipulation. She saw a woman who had chosen her as a project and would not rest until that project was complete. It was both comforting and terrifying. "Dinner is in 2 hours," Sophronia said, rising. "Wear the blue gown I had sent to your room. It will bring out your eyes. And try to remember that beneath his cold exterior, my son is actually quite decent. He simply needs reminding occasionally." She departed without waiting for a response, leaving Ottilie alone with her thoughts. Dinner that evening was precisely as awkward as anticipated. Theron sat at the head of an enormous table, with Ottilie to his right, and Sophronia across from her. Expectations. "Expectations?" Ottilie set her glass down. "I'm not sure what you mean." "I mean that we should establish expectations for the evening." "What kind of expectations?" "Well, for example, we could establish that we should not talk about politics or religion." "That's a good idea. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our personal lives." "That's a good idea, too." "And we could also establish that we should not talk about our work." "That's a good idea as well." "And we could also establish that we should not talk about our families." "That's a good idea as well." "And we could also establish that we should not talk about our hobbies." "That's a good idea as well." And we could also establish that we should not talk about our dreams. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our fears. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our regrets. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our hopes. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our goals. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our regrets. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our hopes. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our goals. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our regrets. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our hopes. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our goals. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our regrets. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our hopes. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our goals. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our regrets. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our hopes. That's a good idea as well. And we could also establish that we should not talk about our goals. That expectations. Expectations? Ottilie set down her fork. For this arrangement, we will be spending considerable time together over the next 3 months. It would help if we could manage basic conversation. I'm capable of conversation, Your Grace. Theron. She took a breath. What would you like to discuss? Tell me about yourself, beyond the scandal. What do you actually care about? The question surprised her. No one had asked her that in years. She was always defined by what had happened to her, never by who was she actually. I enjoy reading, she said slowly. History, mostly, and mathematics, though I know that is unusual for a woman. Mathematics? My father taught me when I was young, before he realized it was not considered proper. Theron's expression shifted, something like interest flickering in those gray eyes. What kind of mathematics? Accounting, primarily. I used to help my father with the estate ledgers before. She trailed off. Before Thornberry destroyed your family's stability. Yes. So you are not merely decorative. You have actual skills. He sounded almost approving. That is useful to know. Useful for what? For maintaining the fiction that I would actually choose to marry you. He held up a hand as she bristled. I mean no insult. But society will wonder what attracted me. I am not known for pursuing women. They will need to believe you offer something the simpering debutantes do not. And what would that be? Intelligence. He said it simply, as if it were obvious. Conversation that does not make me want to flee the room. The ability to discuss something beyond fashion and gossip. Despite herself, Ottilie felt a small warmth at the words. You do not set a very high bar. You would be amazed how few people clear it. Sophronia watched them with barely concealed satisfaction. You see, you are getting along already. I knew you would suit. Mother, Theron said warningly, I am simply observing. Now, we have the Ashworth Music Hall tomorrow evening, your first public appearance as an engaged couple. Theron, you will be attentive. Hold her chair, fetch her refreshments, and look at her as if she is the most fascinating creature you have ever encountered. That might be challenging, Ottilie murmured, given that he looks at me as if I am a mathematical problem he cannot solve. To her surprise, Theron laughed. The sound transformed his face entirely, softening those harsh angles, making him look almost boyish. Perhaps you are, he said. A problem worth solving. Their eyes met across the table, and something shifted in the air between them. Not quite warmth, but perhaps the absence of coldness. The beginning of something that might, with time, become understanding. Tomorrow evening, Sophronia said, her voice cutting through the moment. We will show society exactly what the Duke of Ravenscroft sees in the scandalous Lady Ottilie. And then, my dear, we will begin dismantling Aldrich Hensley, piece by piece. Ottilie looked at Theron, at his mother, at the impossible situation she had stumbled into. Then I suppose, she said quietly, I should prepare for war. The Ashworth Music Hall was precisely the kind of event Ottilie had avoided for 2 years. The drawing room overflowed with London's finest, all gathered ostensibly to hear a renowned soprano perform Italian arias. In reality, they had come to observe the Duke of Ravenscroft and his mysterious new fiancée. Ottilie could feel their stares like physical weight as she entered on Theron's arm. Whispers rippled through the crowd, faces turning toward them with varying degrees of curiosity, skepticism, and outright disbelief. Steady, Theron murmured, his hand covering hers where it rested on his arm. They are merely curious. They are waiting for me to stumble. Then do not give them the satisfaction. His grip tightened slightly. Chin up. You are to be a duchess. Act like one. Something about his confidence steadied her. Ottilie lifted her chin and allowed him to guide her through the crowd, nodding graciously at people who had cut her dead for years. Lady Ashworth descended upon them immediately, her eyes bright with barely contained excitement. Your Grace, what an honor. And Lady Ottilie, how delightful to see you again. It has been far too long. 2 years, Ottilie thought. 2 years since you told your footman to deny me entry to your home. Lady Ashworth, she said smoothly, how kind of you to include us. I understand the soprano tonight is exceptional. Oh, she is magnificent. But I suspect all eyes will be on you two this evening. Lady Ashworth's gaze darted between them hungrily. Such a surprising announcement. No one had any idea His Grace was courting. His Grace values privacy, Ottilie replied. As do I. We preferred to know each other properly, before subjecting our relationship to public scrutiny. Theron's hand pressed against her back, a gesture of approval she felt rather than saw. How romantic, Lady Ashworth cooed. You must tell me everything. How did you meet? When did you know? We met at a ball, Theron said, his voice carrying just far enough to reach the eager ears nearby. Lady Ottilie was hiding behind a column, trying to avoid tedious conversation. I found her preference for solitude over simpering flattery utterly refreshing. Nervous laughter rippled through the listeners. Ottilie felt her cheeks warm, but she played along. His Grace has unconventional taste. Most men prefer women who hang on their every word. Most men are idiots, Theron said flatly. More laughter, this time genuine. Ottilie glanced up at him and found his gray eyes glinting with something that might have been amusement. They were shown to seats near the front, a position of honor that ensured maximum visibility. As they settled in, Theron leaned close enough that his breath stirred her hair. You are doing well. I am terrified. It does not show. His voice dropped lower. That is a rare gift. The soprano began her performance, her crystalline voice filling the room with emotion. Ottilie tried to focus on the music, but she was acutely aware of Theron beside her, the warmth of his shoulder nearly touching hers, the way he had positioned himself slightly in front of her, as if shielding her from the crowd's scrutiny. During the interval, they were swarmed. People who had ignored her for years suddenly wished to renew acquaintance. Women who had whispered behind fans now complimented her gown. Men who had looked through her as if she were invisible now bowed with exaggerated courtesy. Through it all, Theron remained at her side, attentive, protective, playing the devoted fiancé with convincing skill. Lady Ottilie, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. Ottilie's blood turned to ice. Aldrich Hensley stood before them, golden-haired and handsome as ever, his smile not quite reaching his cold blue eyes. What a surprise to see you here, he continued, his tone dripping false pleasantness. And with Ravenscroft, no less. How unexpected. Theron's entire demeanor shifted. Where he had been relaxed, he was now coiled tension, his hand at Ottilia's waist suddenly possessive. Thornberry. His voice carried the weight of a death sentence. I do not recall inviting you to speak to my fiancé. Fiancé? Aldrich's laugh was sharp. Forgive me, but I find that difficult to believe. Lady Ottilie and I have a history, you see. I know things about her character that perhaps you do not. The crowd had gone silent, sensing blood in the water. Ottilie felt herself shaking. 2 years of careful composure threatened to crumble in the face of the man who had destroyed her. Then Theron stepped forward, placing himself between her and Aldrich. You will not speak to her, he said quietly. You will not look at her. You will not breathe in her direction. If you approach her again, if you so much as whisper her name, you will discover exactly why my family's motto is, mercy is for the weak. Aldrich's smile faltered. Ravenscroft, I was merely... You were leaving. Theron's voice had not risen, but something in it made nearby guests take a step back. Now. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Then Aldrich's gaze dropped, his jaw tightening with suppressed fury. Of course, he inclined his head stiffly. My apologies for any misunderstanding. He retreated into the crowd. Theron turned back to Ottilie, his expression softening slightly. Are you all right? Her voice would not work properly. Yes, thank you. You are shaking. I know. She could not stop. Seeing Aldrich again after everything had shattered something inside her. Theron guided her toward a quiet corner, his body blocking her from view as she fought to compose herself. Breathe, he said gently. He cannot hurt you. Not anymore. You don't know what he did. I know enough. His eyes were fierce, and I meant what I said. If he comes near you again, there will be consequences. Ottilie looked up at him, this strange, cold man who had just defended her honor without hesitation. Something shifted in her chest. Why? She whispered. This is just an arrangement. You do not owe me protection. Perhaps not. His jaw tightened. But I find I want to give it anyway. The admission hung between them, unexpected, and weighted with meaning. We should return, Ottilie said finally. People will talk if we disappear too long. Let them. But he offered his arm, and together they rejoined the gathering. Later, in the carriage ride home, Sophronia looked between them with knowing eyes. That went well, she observed. Very convincing performance. Theron said nothing. He stared out the window, his expression unreadable. Ottilie found herself wondering if it had been a performance at all. 4 weeks into the arrangement, Ottilie stopped counting the days until it ended. They had fallen into a routine that felt disturbingly natural. Breakfasts together in the morning room, where they discussed news and politics over coffee and toast. Afternoons apart, Theron managing his parliamentary duties, while Ottilie explored the vast Ravenscroft library. Evenings either attending social events or sitting together in the study, reading in companionable silence. The silence, Ottilie discovered, was remarkably comfortable. Theron did not feel the need to fill every moment with chatter. He simply existed beside her, occasionally sharing a passage he found interesting, or asking her opinion on matters his peers would never consider consulting a woman about. You have a gift for seeing to the heart of problems, he told her one evening, after she had analyzed a proposed parliamentary bill and identified 3 significant flaws. Most people get distracted by surface details. My father taught me to look for what is not being said, rather than what is. A useful skill in politics, as well as mathematics. Small moments accumulated like snowfall. He remembered she preferred her tea without sugar. She learned he hated the smell of roses because they reminded him of his late grandmother's funeral. He discovered she had a weakness for lemon pastries and ensured the kitchen stocked them regularly. She noticed he rubbed his temples when his headache struck and learned to quietly dim the lamps. None of it meant anything, Ottilie told herself. They were simply two people making the best of an unusual situation. Then came the night of the Pemberton Ball. It began pleasantly enough. They danced twice, maintaining proper distance while appearing appropriately devoted. Ottilie had grown skilled at looking at Theron as if he fascinated her, though increasingly she suspected it required no acting at all. During a break in the dancing, Theron was called away by a political colleague. Ottilie found a quiet spot near the refreshment table, content to observe the glittering crowd. She did not see Aldrich approach until he was beside her. "Alone at last," he murmured, his voice like silk over broken glass. "Your watchdog has abandoned you." Dread coiled in Ottilie's chest. "Leave me alone, Aldrich." "So formal. We were nearly married, Ottilie. Surely we can be civil." He moved closer, his body blocking her from the crowd's view. "I have been watching you these past weeks, playing Duchess, pretending you belong in Ravenscroft's world. It is almost convincing." "It is none of your concern." "But it is." His smile was cruel. "You see, I know what you are. A desperate little fortune hunter who trapped the first wealthy man who showed her attention. Just like you tried to trap me." "You lying?" "Careful." His hand closed around her wrist, hidden by their position. "You do not want to make a scene. Think of your precious reputation." Pain shot up her arm. Ottilie tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. "When this farce with Ravenscroft ends, and it will end, you will have nothing." Aldrich's breath was hot against her ear. "No one will believe a whore's word over mine. I will make certain of it. Release her." Theron's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Aldrich's grip loosened. Ottilie stumbled back, cradling her bruised wrist. Theron stood 3 feet away, but his presence seemed to fill the entire room. His face was carved from ice, but his eyes burned with something far more dangerous. "Ravenscroft," Aldrich's composure faltered. "We were merely talking. You were touching my fiancée without her consent." Theron moved forward with predatory grace. "You were speaking to her in a manner that caused her visible distress. And unless I am very much mistaken, you left marks on her wrist." The last words were barely audible, but the rage behind them was unmistakable. Nearby guests had begun to notice. Heads turned. Conversations died. "This is a misunderstanding," Aldrich said, backing away. "Lady Ottilie and I have history. Old lovers quarreling, nothing more." "Lovers?" Theron's laugh was terrifying. "Is that the lie you were choosing?" "Theron," Ottilie said softly. "Please, not here." He did not look at her. His entire focus remained fixed on Aldrich. "You destroyed her," Theron said, his voice carrying now, reaching the ever-growing crowd of observers. "You abandoned her at the altar and spread lies to cover your own sins. Your gambling debts, your mistress, your cowardice." Aldrich's face went white. "You have no proof." "I have letters, ledgers, witnesses." Theron's smile was merciless. "Did you think the Duke of Ravenscroft would attach himself to a woman without investigating the man who slandered her?" "I know everything, Thornberry, every sordid detail." The crowd was fully silent now. Hundreds of eyes watched as the Viscount Thornberry's carefully constructed reputation crumbled. "You will not speak to Lady Ottilie again. You will not write to her. You will not mention her name in any context. If I hear even a whisper of impropriety directed toward her, I will ensure that every gambling den and moneylender in England knows the true state of your finances." Theron stepped closer, looming over the smaller man. "And then I will destroy you socially, professionally, and personally. I will make what you did to her look like a gentle rebuke." Aldrich was shaking visibly. "You cannot. I am the Duke of Ravenscroft. I can do whatever I wish." Theron's voice dropped to a whisper, that somehow carried to every corner of the room. Test me. Please. I am begging you to give me a reason. For one eternal moment, no one moved. Then Aldrich turned and fled. The ballroom erupted in whispers as Theron turned to Ottilia. His expression softened as he took her hand, examining her bruised wrist with gentle fingers. Did he hurt you badly? It is nothing. Her voice wavered. Theron, what you just did was long overdue. He raised her wrist to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to the reddened skin. The gesture was intimate, protective, and entirely visible to the watching crowd. No one harms what is mine. Ottilia's breath caught. I am not yours. This is an arrangement. Is it? His gray eyes searched her face. Because I am no longer certain of anything. By morning, the story had spread across London. The Duke of Ravenscroft had publicly destroyed Viscount Thornbury in defense of his fiancée's honor. The gambling debts were confirmed. The mistress came forward with her own account. Families who had welcomed Aldrich into their homes now closed their doors. All of England knew the wrath of Ravenscroft, and Ottilie knew, with terrifying certainty, that she had fallen in love with a man she could never truly have. In the aftermath of the Pemberton Ball, everything changed. Society's attitude toward Ottilie shifted like wind changing direction. Where once she had been shunned, she was now sought after. Invitations flooded Ravenscroft House. Women who had whispered behind fans now courted her friendship. Men who had looked through her now treated her with elaborate respect. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Ottilie found herself drowning in confusion. Theron had become solicitous in a way that felt less like performance and more like genuine concern. He checked her wrist daily, though the bruises had faded. He stayed closer at social events, his hand constantly finding reasons to touch her back, her arm, her shoulder. And his eyes, those gray winter storms, followed her with an intensity that made her pulse race. You are thinking too loudly, Sophronia observed one afternoon. I can practically hear the gears turning. I'm merely tired. You're confused. The dowager set down her teacup. About my son. Ottilie said nothing. He cares for you. Genuinely. Sophronia's voice was unusually gentle. I have known Theron his entire life. I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. We made an agreement. 3 months, then we part ways. Agreements can be renegotiated. Not this one. Ottilie stood abruptly. Your Grace, I appreciate everything you have done for me. My reputation is restored. My family is secure. I am grateful beyond measure. But I cannot allow myself to believe this is anything more than it is. Why not? Because I entered this arrangement for money. The words tasted bitter. Because no matter how I feel, there will always be a question of whether my affection is genuine or simply another performance. Theron deserves better than that uncertainty. Sophronia studied her for a long moment. And how do you feel? Ottilie could not answer. She fled instead. That evening, Theron found her in the library. She had been there for hours, staring at the same page without reading a single word. When he entered, she did not look up, though every nerve in her body was suddenly, painfully aware of his presence. You have been avoiding me. I have been busy. Ottilie. He crossed to stand before her chair. Look at me. She forced herself to meet his gaze. The rawness she saw there made her heart clench. Something has changed, he said quietly. Since the ball. You have built walls that were not there before. I'm simply trying to maintain appropriate boundaries. Boundaries. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what we are calling it? Theron, I need to tell you something. He knelt before her chair, bringing them to eye level. And I need you to hear it without running away. Her hands were unsteady. Please do not. I have to. He took her hands, his grip warm and steady. These past weeks have been the most unexpected of my life. I entered this arrangement resenting my mother's manipulation. I expected to tolerate you at best. Instead, I found someone who challenges me, understands me, and sees past every wall I have built. Theron, stop. I am not performing anymore. His voice cracked. When I defended you at the ball, it was not for show. When I think about this arrangement ending, about you leaving, I cannot breathe. I have fallen in love with you, utterly, completely, and irreversibly. The words hung between them, beautiful and devastating. You cannot love me, she whispered. And yet I do. I came here for money. I agreed to deceive all of London for compensation. How can you love someone capable of that? Because I know why you did it. His hands tightened on hers. You did it to save your family. You sacrificed your pride and risked your remaining dignity for people you love. That is not mercenary. That is courage. Tears were streaming down her face. You deserve someone without scandal attached to her name. I deserve to choose for myself, and I choose you. Theron, marry me. The words came out fierce. Not as part of an arrangement, not because my mother orchestrated it. Marry me because I love you, and I believe, despite your protestations, that you love me too. She did love him. Heaven help her. She loved him with every broken piece of her heart. But the fear was overwhelming. I cannot say yes, she said, each word like swallowing glass. Not now. Not while I am still living under your roof, still dependent on your family's generosity. Ottilie, if you truly love me, give me time. She gripped his hands with desperate strength. Let the arrangement end as planned. Let me leave this house and return to my own life. If what you feel is real, it will survive the separation. And if what you feel is real, then I will know. Her voice broke. Because I will have nothing to gain by admitting it. Theron was silent for a long moment. The pain in his eyes was almost unbearable. 3 more weeks, he said finally. Then the arrangement ends, and you leave. Yes. And after that? After that, we will see what survives. He raised her hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to each palm. The tenderness of it nearly undid her. I will wait, he said quietly, however long it takes. But Ottilie, know this. My feelings will not change. Not in 3 weeks. Not in 3 years. Not ever. He rose and left without another word. Ottilie sat alone in the darkening library, tears streaming down her face, loving him with everything she had, and terrified it would never be enough. The remaining weeks of the arrangement passed in quiet agony. Ottilie and Theron continued their public appearances, continued their private breakfasts and library evenings, but everything felt fragile now. They spoke of safe topics, politics, books, the weather, carefully avoiding the confession that hung between them like smoke. Sophronia watched with increasing frustration, but for once held her tongue. With only 4 days remaining before Ottilie was to return home, disaster struck. She was taking tea in the morning room when Sophronia burst in, her usual composure shattered. We have a problem. The dowager's face was pale. Aldrich Hensley is fighting back. Cold fear washed through Ottilie. What do you mean? He has been spreading new rumors, claiming the engagement is fraudulent, that Theron was manipulated by me into this arrangement for political purposes. Sophronia paced the room. He has found witnesses, servants, who saw you arrive with packed bags the day after the Hartwell ball. He is constructing a narrative that you are a schemer who conspired with me to trap my son. But that is... Ottilie stopped. It was not entirely false. The arrangement had been manufactured. She had moved in for money. The Tun is listening, Sophronia continued grimly. People love scandal, and the idea that the Duke of Ravenscroft was deceived makes for delicious gossip. If this gains traction, everything we accomplished will be undone. Then we end the engagement early. Ottilie's voice was hollow. I leave today. Theron can claim he discovered my mercenary motives and cast me out. His reputation survives. And yours is destroyed permanently. My reputation was destroyed 2 years ago. At least this way, Theron is protected. Absolutely not. Theron stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. This is my decision, Ottilie said. No. He crossed to her in 3 strides. I will not allow you to sacrifice yourself for my reputation. It is the only logical solution. Logic be damned. His hands gripped her shoulders. I told you I loved you. Did you think that was conditional? That I would abandon you the moment things became difficult? I think you should have never been put in this position. Tears burned her eyes. This is my fault. I agreed to your mother's scheme. I took the money. Everything Aldrich is saying, it is rooted in truth. The truth is that I love you, his voice cracked. The truth is that these past weeks have been the happiest of my life. The truth is that I would burn my reputation to ashes before I let you be destroyed again. Theron, marry me, his grip tightened. Today. Right now. If we are married, truly married, their accusations become meaningless. That is madness. Perhaps. His gray eyes blazed. But I am tired of sanity. I am tired of propriety and arrangements and pretending I do not want to spend every moment of my life with you. You barely know me. I know you prefer lemon in your tea. I know you chew your lip when you are thinking. I know you cry at poetry, but refuse to show weakness in public. I know you are braver than anyone I have ever met, that you survived being destroyed and rebuilt yourself from nothing. His forehead pressed against hers. I know that I cannot imagine a future without you in it. Ottilie's composure fractured. If I say yes now, you will never know if it was real or just desperation. I do not care. I care. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I need you to understand something. I love you. I have loved you for weeks, possibly since the moment you asked who hurt me and actually waited for the answer. But I cannot marry you while there is any doubt, any shadow of uncertainty about my motives. Then tell me what you need. I need to face Aldrich, publicly. The words came from somewhere deep inside her. I need to stand before society and tell the truth. All of it. How this arrangement started, why I agreed, and what it became. That will expose everything? Yes. But it will also prove that I am not hiding. I am not ashamed. She took a shaky breath. And then, if you still want me, after everyone knows the full ugly truth, I will marry you. Not because I am trapped or desperate, but because I choose you. Theron stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. The Waverley Ball is tonight. Half of London will be there, including Thornbury. Then that is where we end this. The Waverley Ball was everything Ottilie had dreaded. Aldrich stood across the room, smirking. Aldrich stood across the room, smirking with the confidence of a man who believed he had already won. Theron squeezed her hand. You do not have to do this. Yes, I do. She stepped forward, raising her voice to Carrie. Lord Thornbury, you have been spreading accusations about me. I believe I deserve the chance to respond. The crowd went silent. Aldrich's smirk wavered. Lady Ottilie, this is hardly the place. It is exactly the place. She moved to the center of the room, heart pounding. You have called me a schemer, a conspirator, a woman who manipulated the Duke of Ravenscroft. Allow me to tell everyone the truth. She turned to face the watching crowd. 2 years ago, Aldrich Hensley abandoned me at the altar and spread lies to destroy my reputation. He claimed I was shameless, that I had pursued him. The truth was that I discovered his gambling debts and his mistress, and he destroyed me before I could expose him. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. When the Dowager Duchess approached me with her scheme, I agreed. Yes, for money. My family was drowning, and I was desperate. Ottilie's voice strengthened. But what began as an arrangement became something real. The Duke of Ravenscroft saw me when no one else would look. He defended me when no one else would speak. He showed me kindness I had forgotten existed. She turned to look at Theron, standing at the edge of the crowd. I love him, not for his title or his wealth, but for the man he is. And I am tired of hiding that truth because of shame over how we began. Silence hung over the ballroom. Then Theron moved forward, taking her hand. Lady Ottilie has given you the truth, he said, his voice carrying. Now, allow me to add mine. I love this woman. I intend to marry her. And anyone who questions her character or her motives will answer to me personally. He turned to face her, pulling a ring from his pocket. A sapphire surrounded by diamonds, glinting in the candlelight. Ottilie Whitmore, will you marry me? Not as part of any arrangement. Simply because I love you and cannot imagine my life without you. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, I will marry you. The crowd erupted in applause as Theron slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her, properly and thoroughly, in front of all of London society. Across the room, Aldrich Hensley slipped away, his final gambit defeated. No one noticed him go. The wedding took place 2 weeks later at the Ravenscroft family chapel. It was intimate, only family and close friends. Nothing like the spectacle Ottilie's first engagement had promised. She wore a simple ivory gown, and when she walked down the aisle toward Theron, she finally understood what it meant to choose someone freely. His eyes glistened as she reached him. You came, he whispered. Where else would I be? The vows felt like promises rather than performances. When the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, Ottilie felt something inside her finally heal. At the wedding breakfast, Sophronia raised a glass. To my son and his bride. May their marriage be as passionate as its beginning and considerably less dramatic. She smiled at Ottilie. Though I suspect some drama is inevitable with this family. You would be disappointed otherwise, Theron replied dryly. Later that evening, alone in their chambers, Theron presented her with a document. What is this? Read it. Ottilie scanned the pages, her breath catching. It was a deed transferring a substantial property and income into her name alone, completely independent of their marriage. Theron, this is insurance. He took her hands. So you will never wonder if you stayed for security. This is yours, regardless of anything. If you ever wish to leave, you have the means to do so comfortably. I will never wish to leave. I know. His smile was tender. But I wanted you to have the choice. Always. She kissed him then, deeply and without reservation, and what followed was everything she had never dared to dream. The gardens of Ravenscroft estate rang with children's laughter. Ottilie watched from the terrace as Theron chased their twins, 4-year-old Phineas and his sister Rosalind, through the flower beds. Her hand rested on the swell of her belly, where their third child grew. They will destroy the roses, Sophronia observed from her chair nearby. Let them, Ottilie smiled. Roses can be replanted. You have softened my son considerably. He used to care about such things. He used to care about many unnecessary things. Now he knows what matters. Theron caught Rosalind, swinging her high while she shrieked with delight. Phineas tackled his father's legs, and all three tumbled onto the grass in a laughing heap. Ottilie's heart swelled with a joy she had never imagined possible. Did you hear about Thornbury? Sophronia asked casually. I try not to follow his affairs. He has fled to the continent. Creditors finally caught up with him. His mistress abandoned him for a wealthy merchant. Sophronia's smile was satisfied. He has nothing left. Ottilie felt no triumph, only a distant pity. Aldrich had been a monster who had nearly destroyed her, but his power had come from her fear, and she had long since stopped being afraid. Theron appeared at the terrace steps, grass-stained and grinning, a child under each arm. "Your offspring require feeding," he announced. "Apparently, terrorizing gardens is hungry work. They are your offspring when they are destructive. Funny how that works." He set the children down and crossed to kiss her, lingering despite their audience. "I love you, Lady Ravenscroft. And I love you, even when you let our children destroy the gardens. Especially then." Later that evening, after the children were asleep and the house had quieted, Ottilie found Theron in the library. Their library now, filled with books they had collected together and memories they had made. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, settling beside him. "The scandal, the unconventional beginning, all of it?" "Never." He pulled her close. "I would endure 1,000 scandals for this life with you. Even the dramatic ones your mother engineers? Even those." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Though I do hope our children inherit your sense of propriety rather than her talent for chaos." Ottilie laughed, burrowing deeper into his embrace. She thought of the woman she had been 5 years ago, hiding behind a column, convinced she deserved only shadows. She thought of Theron's voice in the darkness, asking the question that had changed everything. "Who hurt you?" Someone had. Badly and deliberately, and without remorse. But she had survived. She had found love in the most unlikely place, and she had built a life more beautiful than anything she had ever imagined. Some stories began with lies and ended in truth. Theirs was one of them. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, made you believe in second chances, or reminded you that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, please show your support by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing with fellow romance lovers. Your support keeps our storytelling corner alive and thriving. Stay tuned. Another beautiful story is waiting for you at the end of this video. Click, listen, and let your heart be swept away once more. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being here.